Hello and welcome to the latest HUBCAST with me, Ryan Hallet. I am joined today by the commercial director and one of the people behind PerformX, Steve Orton. Steve, thank you very much for joining me today. It's much appreciated, and this is probably a very busy part of the year for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. No, it's awesome to be on, and yeah, being back talking about events and everything like that. Yeah, it's a busy time. What are we now just under 4 weeks away. So
It's
yeah, I
crazy.
think yeah, it will get even busier. But that's one of the joys of events, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. The buzz about it. I mean, before we go to PerformX, I want to know more about you. I mean, tell us a bit about you. Tell the listeners like how you've got to sort of where you are.
Yeah. Well, where do I start? So I guess could go too far back, which is very
Yeah.
boring. But let's not go there. I guess from from a business point of view, worked back in the day, did a lot of cold sales, like door to door. That was my first entry into what I thought was business, and it was a pretty harsh environment, just walking door to door, but taught me a lot from I guess a sales, business development, speaking to loads of different types of people,
Yeah.
which I think is really good. Did that, worked into sort of recruitment for a couple of years, and then essentially the family had an events business that I didn't want to go into. First of all, I didn't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, you've just gone into the family business and it's easy. I wanted to sort of go my own way for a couple of years.
Mm.
Um, Came back in there, and that was all around healthcare trade shows. So pharmacy, dentistry, veterinary, not really the most exciting uh, areas for me, but it was always born out of either a family member had sort of got an interest or been in that industry. So my dad was a dentist, so that's where the concept around dentistry came from. Pharmaceutical, brother in that, things like that. So it was always a relevance, and we used to run motorsport shows in Ireland, Fast and Furious when that was around down at Brighton Racecourse, and got some like when I was 15,
Love that.
16, sort of the stories of, probably you wouldn't be able to do it now, like seeing like the Pizza Hut boy being sellotaped, cellophane up and everything like that.
Yeah.
All of those stories when you were a lot younger, but that sort of was events for me. But my side of it was always dealing with the clients. So the brands that came on board. So did that for quite a few years. That business got bought by a private equity company that is now a large exhibition company. I wasn't involved in that. And at the time, um, I guess there was nothing in the UK that was related to health, fitness, or training, probably as we know it now. And that's where the brand that probably a lot of people will recognize from back in the day, BodyPower, came
Mm.
about. So there was a lot of, I guess it was bodybuilding in many essence. There was a lot of American shows out there that people went over to, but the UK didn't have anything. Sports nutrition was just starting. All
Mm.
of these things, there was some trade shows, but there was nothing what I classify like an enthusiast market. So that grew over the years, where the likes of Gymshark, Grenade, they sort of launched
Yeah.
and rocketed from there. So that was great. And I guess one of the big things is I was dealing with a lot of the brands. I was dealing with the content. That was one of the big things that I still enjoy massively now. Um, but I was dealing with the educators and the brands, which allowed me to develop a really strong network and relationship with a lot of those people. Um, and I guess fast forward in short, so I don't bore you or anyone too much, is um, I decided to take the decision to resign and move away from Body Power around early 2021, because I felt the industry's moving forwards, and from my perspective, there was other opportunities, and I wanted to almost create something myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then that's essentially where moving on to PerformX, and at the time I created my own consultancy around event and activations and market entry for brands, due to having done that for the last sort of 15, 20 years. But yeah, the last couple of years has really been on commercially driving sort of the strategy and growing PerformX.
Yeah. So, I mean, sort of the catalyst for PerformX then was obviously having so much influence in body power and then wanting to do I guess, and create your own thing. So what did you see changing what made you want to create PerformX?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few things going on, some behind the scenes where I didn't maybe agree with the direction of what was
Mm.
happening, but actually the market was changing, and I was speaking to a lot of brands, speaking to a lot of people that, that sort of, and it's not pure bodybuilding, but we were moving to way more of that functional training, how people train was changing. Brands were wanting different things, but also that was very consumer driven. And I guess in my DNA, I didn't just want it to be sort of, and I use the analogy of just like cramming as many,
Yeah,
people into a hall and it being like, take 30 quid off them. Yeah, I felt as though, looking at the market from a professional point of view, and, I guess it's people that work in the industry rather than the consumer, that there hadn't been an event for fitness professionals for probably 12, 13 years when, back in the day, there was Fit Pro Live and things like that, which were great. And a lot of the chains took their PTs to. There wasn't actually a quality, credible event that brought the best in the industry together.
yeah,
That was really my catalyst. And then looking from I guess the beauty I had was I could look at the landscape of fitness and say
mm,
there's some great traditional trade shows. There were some brands doing their own pop-ups and their own activations, but there was nothing in this almost middle market of training, um, fitness professionals, commercial, being really on trend with what was going on in the
yeah,
market. And that's when I spoke to, a couple of the guys that are the co-founders and the guys that have been involved and running it and said, look, this is where I see an opportunity. Um, and there was other ideas, but I think ultimately we've come to a point where the credibility and the quality is really important, for fitness professionals, for anyone attending. So we've got a very strong education focus, because I think
yeah,
education can sometimes, it takes me back to school, and not everyone has great enjoyment at school. And it's like, oh, I've got to learn about that education. But
mm,
actually, when you're a coach, or I think sometimes the older you get, the more you want to learn.
yeah,
Um, so, and you can choose essentially. So, if you look at a fitness professional, if they want to develop their career, become better, they've got to be continually educating themselves, learning from the best. And off the back of that, and social media has been probably, it's brilliant in many ways, but there's also this angle of how do people that are coming into the industry, there's been this massive dropout of they come in, they can't make it work. How do they know who the credible, the correct people to listen to are that can give them the strong basic, and then they can go and find other people in their sort of niches. So that was something I was really looking at, saying, how do we create something that's credible? How something that's progressive, but also it allows someone to come to an event for 2 days, engage with, learn from, take on really good content, but then implement it into their business the next day almost. That's
yeah.
something I find really, find it's a really important thing, that if you come to something, you've got to take something away from it and implement it, um, to make your either your business or your knowledge or whatever you're coming for better.
Yeah, I had the privilege to go last year, and besides the actual venue itself, which is obviously so cool, like it's a proper
Yeah, it's
cool
a good,
venue. Like
and that,
it's
that falls into that whole changing up, events in many ways.
yeah,
And worked in big venues that are great, but they become a bit soulless. And
mm,
I think most of us that are involved in fitness or health, or creating the wellness world at the moment, is it's not be it should be something that within the brand DNA, whether that's the venue, whether that's the content, everything, you can go in that venue and go, I get why you're doing it,
yeah,
rather than, oh, I could turn up here, there's 150, 200 stands, I'll walk around and I'll go away. It's a bit
yeah, yeah, yeah.
soulless to me.
Mm,
So, that's one of the beauties, I'd say, of something like a PerformX. You've got these brands, we're limited on how many brands we can have, but that actually plays a positive role, because the brands have got these rooms and activations, so they can
Mm.
own that space themselves. But you as a visitor could walk along, go into XYZ's activation, come back out, and you're still part of the event. So
Yeah.
they almost can own their own space rather than just being one of 100, 200, 300.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And so I guess like it's mainly for like PTs and gym owners. That's sort of like your target market that you want to go. Is there anyone else that you attract, or is that solely your focus?
Yeah, I guess those are our two, what I guess we classify the two big personas, because
Yeah.
I think that's where that comes in. Like the education, the content is very much driven towards, whether it's financial, marketing, sales, the business side of things. But then we've also got a big technical element, whether people are wanting to talk about conditioning, shoulder mobility,
Mm.
some really specific areas. Um, but yeah, from other areas, it's anybody that, for me, I've mentioned the education side. There's also I guess it's the wider known thought leadership. And when you look at leadership, teamwork,
Mm.
culture, personal development is a big part of it. We've got someone like Steven Bartlett this year, who majority of people know and look at the content he puts across, but it's about how we develop ourselves as individuals. But then we've got, some of the best, the link between sport and fitness and sport and business is massive.
Yeah,
That's
God,
something,
yeah.
with my background in rugby, being in teams, looking at it, we had someone like Stuart Lancaster, I guess the Leinster and soon to be Stad 92, coach, talking about the difference between managing, coaching, and directing.
Mm.
Um, but if you look at it, anybody, if you're in a business and you're a manager, if you're an owner, you can come to PerformX and go, I can implement that understanding and that concept into my own business. So we've got senior level execs, and I think we are already getting a lot of people going, I want to come to that because it's quite personal development related.
Mm.
And then I guess at the other side of the spectrum is a bit more of, and it's not as big a focus, but what we'd say an everyday athlete, that person that is not qualified as a coach or PT, but they're very passionate.
Yeah.
So we've got the opportunity for them to learn, meet people, take those nuggets that they can then use in the gym. And maybe they will become a coach, or they've got that aspiration. But yeah, going back to what you said, like primarily it's execs that work in the industry, it's those gym owners, and it's those PTs that we're really catering for.
Yeah. And like what I saw from last year is it's not specific for any like where you are in your business, like people that are just starting out, people that have had their business for 1 or 2 years, but also people who have had their business for like 10 years. Like the ideas that were getting thrown around from the speakers were amazing. That's things you just don't think of like yourself, like that's why I think these events are so good. And like it's a transferable skills as well, such as like marketing and I know it is
Yeah,
aimed at fitness professionals, but I mean, I feel like anyone could sort of go there and be like,
yeah,
actually, I've learned something. That's
yeah, and that's something massive that, like you say, there's so many transferable skills, because actually, sales, marketing, social media, whatever it is, unless you get very technical, they are skills that people could learn from an
yeah,
industry that they're working in. And once again, like you say, if you look at things like building a high performing culture or a high performing team, most people, if you are either part of a team or you're leading a team, you want to understand that.
mm,
So, and it's not one industry focus, which probably is a moving forwards is an opportunity of how you look at different verticals or different industries to talk about PerformX.
yeah. And like something you like, obviously the body power is obviously extremely consumer related, like the focus, sorry, and that this one's obviously a lot more like business related. It's the difference you see is that everyone's there to learn, aren't they? Like I think it's not just there to
Yeah,
like grab freebies and all that sort of stuff. Like people are
yeah, and
really focused.
that's the thing I really grew over the years to not like, was just chuck as many products out. There was no value, I didn't feel.
Mm,
And I think that went back to my thought process of, how do you create something where you get the right type of people coming along? Now, whether that is learning, whether that is networking, but everyone's there for the right reason. Like, and I guess that comes into things like ticket prices. It's slightly more expensive,
Mm.
but if you look at it from a, say, a coach's point of view, it might be 1 to 2 sessions, and you've got hours and hours of high quality content that if you are willing to invest in, you will get a return off. So I think there's probably, if we added up, there's like 10, 15,000 pounds worth of value by seeing different people over a day or two, and you can get that for anything from like 60, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something. If people, like you said, if people are there and they want to learn, and they're willing, ultimately, if they're willing to invest in themselves, and we hear a lot of the sort of really good names in the industry say you've got to invest in yourself. That's one of the reasons why people should be coming to PerformX, because they're willing to invest in themselves and learn from good, credible people.
Yeah. And even just chatting to people there, like when you're walking around and like hearing about other people's businesses, like that's one of the things that like, I was fortunate. Obviously, a few people there have either seen my face floating around or have used the software before, and it was just a case of just chatting to them, asking about their business, and
Yeah,
just giving them ideas on how I've seen other people use it. And like, but I guess that could be used from anyone, like they could say,
yeah,
okay, well, I do this in my business. And they're like, well, I do this, try this. And because you do
that
get a bit of
yeah,
free time.
you do. And what actually one of the concepts we've got this year, and it's now not called it, but someone used the concept of speed dating, and I was like, let's not call it speed dating, but it's almost like that meetup mentality of going,
Mm,
at this time, if you're a coach or a PT, it's time to network, time to chat to people, and just, like you say, go, what do you use? How do you use it? Oh, I haven't thought of that. And having those conversations. And I think I've realized and known, like, the more you talk to people, the more doors open, the more conversations you have, and the more you learn. That people, yeah,
completely
and
agree.
it goes back to that mindset of having a bit of a growth mentality as well, of being willing to listen and not thinking you know everything.
Yeah, and like people do, and I would say I'm similar. Like you can get stuck in your ways. Like I'm determined to do it this way, and like there's no other way of doing it. But actually, just having a conversation with someone for 10 minutes, or even just listening to one of the speakers, you're like, oh, do you know what? Like that actually is a really good idea, and that could work really well for my business. But
Yeah,
you're right. I think a lot of people get stuck like that.
yeah, and that's where I think events can come into their own. For the last few years, not everyone's been meeting up and everything like that. So
Mm,
actually, but the type of person in there is probably going to be willing to engage with you. Like,
mm,
I've known you could just walk up to anybody in there, introduce yourself, what do you do? And they're not going to look at you like a random on the street and go, why are you speaking to me? They'd probably have a conversation, or
of course.
you're in a almost like a safe environment where you can talk about business,
Mm,
fitness, coaching, and have a conversation.
mm. So, I mean, what do you expect from it like this year? Maybe let's compare it to last year. I mean, last year was obviously
Oh,
the first year, but it was obviously amazing. Like the number of
yeah.
people there, and as I say, the venue, the food stands, which I mentioned to you earlier, Steve. Big fan of those.
As a kid, yeah, hey, it's food,
Massive
food's a
fan
priority,
of
isn't it? Um,
that.
yeah, I think if we're talking, I think last year it was very much about putting a concept on the map, really, in the industry. Um, we'll definitely have, and it's not always, how you should look at it, but we'll definitely have more people there. There's definitely more awareness, but I think it's evolving. From my point of view, one of the reasons for setting up as well was, if you look at social media, if you provide and create good quality content, people are going to watch it.
Mm,
Once again, PerformX will be known for having great quality content there, and that's the reason why people will attend. I think we've got, if you look from a speaking point of view, you've got a whole raft of, different
yeah, some
content.
great names.
Yeah, and I think there's good names there. You've got everything. The whole, cold water therapy and contrast therapies. Everywhere at the moment. But we decided to bring over Dr. Susanna Soberg from Denmark. Who is one of the things I like to look at, is going, who's on the up, and who's growing, and
Yeah,
but who's got quality. And she, not just going on it, she's got all the PhDs, I think, but she had like
yeah,
15, 16,000 followers 5 or 6 months ago. She's now up at like 90,000 followers, and it's trying to pick those people up that understand their value but are willing to educate everyone. So I think people like Susanna coming over, Jordan Shallows from a more training perspective, Steven Bartlett from that whole, I guess, mindset and personal development. We've got some really good names, and then we've got, sporting names coming in talking about leadership. So there's definitely, we're trying to grow on what we did last year. I think one of the changes we've made, and it's more for the flow of the event, but also for people visiting, is creating these streams rather than last year. You'll have seen there was like the one room about business. There was one room about this. What
Mm.
we tried to say, we've got 3 to 4 rooms of education, and we've got like the main stage, the PerformX stage, and other stages. Actually, the business, the training, all of these different streams are across the show, so it
Mm.
allows people to move around. It's great for brands and clients because then they get to see more people, um, and it also means someone that may be really interested in, I know, a big topic this year, for instance, might be like female health. They're not just going to sit in the room for 6 hours listening to that. They can actually go and listen to a talk in one room. They can go downstairs and there's maybe a practical workshop and more involvement there. Then they can go to a different room. So it allows them to get around the venue as well.
Yeah, it's really, do you know what, it's funny you say that. At the back end of that, you're like, oh, there's a particular topic. I wanted to ask you if there was a particular topic this year that has been spoken about or lots of people want to talk about. Because I guess they come to you, or you maybe ask them, or they say, oh, can I speak? Or you say, can you speak here? What do you want to talk about? Has there been something in particular that's come up a lot?
Um, yeah, well, the one, that female health
Yeah, of
element,
course.
very big. So going back to probably September last year, I was introduced through a recommendation of to a lady called Baz Moffat, who owns and runs the Well HQ. And the thing that got me was her passion, and but also knowledge. Like, she works with 2 other doctors that, she's been a coach, Olympic athlete, around understanding the female body. And she's very open. She said, males don't understand it, but females also don't understand their own bodies a lot of the time.
Mm.
And we launched, well, not launched, we ran a summit in September at Loughborough Uni. And it was probably, it was one of those moments where you're like, hold on a minute, this is a bit of a everyone's, and there was a lot of males in the room. And she was almost saying, if you've got a daughter, if you've got a partner, you need to understand this, because there's things that come out of not understanding, um, and then develop that more. And I know across the industry, you see a lot of people talking about sort of menstrual cycle or
Mm.
menopause, and it's great seeing that. But going back to the context of PerformX, I wanted to get someone that is extremely credible, the leader in that world, so to speak. And
Yeah.
she's working with, everyone from some gym chains, but also schools whereby, if you're the example she used was, if you're a 15, if you're a 21-year-old PE teacher, come out of it as a male, and you are teaching 13-year-old girls sport, can you have the right conversations with them about sports bras without feeling embarrassed?
Mm.
And they educate a lot of people, and then it moves through to, everything around the menopause and those side of things. But that, to me, at PerformX, is something I'm really passionate about. Like, got a wife, got a daughter. It really
Mm.
hit home with me. But also, I think it's just a massive, speaking to Baz, we've got to remove the taboo around it and speak normally. It's something that happens every month. So actually, how do we talk about it? And that's what they'll be doing. But also, if you look at our audience, you've got people that are running gyms, you've got, directors of sport running schools, you've got
Mm.
coaches that have got clients. They are some of the biggest influences on these people. So
Mm.
we've got to ensure we almost arm them with the right content and
Yeah.
information. So I think that's a big one. And I think bringing someone like Susanna over as well, going around that sort of cold water,
Yeah.
you know, stress, wellness is definitely something, you can see we're moving and we're there, but how health and wellness is moving to be the big focus. It's fitness is there as an overarching term, but actually the
Yeah.
wellness piece, you move into, I guess, corporate workplace wellness as well.
Mm.
Stress, sleep, all of those things. Like to me, it's around human performance, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a big area. So ultimately, it falls under like PerformX's performance and experience.
Mm.
How do you, as a coach, as a owner of a gym, how do you allow people to perform better in their work life, their gym life, and their family life? Um, so yeah, I'd say if there was any topics, it's that female health side of things, wellness and human performance. That's where there's some really, really quality topics.
Yeah. It's amazing how much it's like expanded, I suppose, over the last year, 2 years, 3 years. It's so much more spoken about now, which is absolutely rightly so.
Yeah,
But it's like there's different things come out of it all the time, and then I'm like hearing more information. Like, oh, I didn't never even thought about something like that. Which is why
yeah,
these events are so good. Like they're genuinely, it's why they're so good. Is because there's only so much you can read online, and like although you can eat facts and stuff, there's also opinion, which is obviously
yeah.
where the business side of it comes into as well. So yeah, amazing. I mean, I've got to ask you, if there's one person that you think people should go watch, who do you think it should be? If you had the choice of one
Um,
person.
I I'd say because of our audience, well, you've got from one side, I know people want to see Steven Bartlett.
Of course, it's going to be the
I
big
think
one.
he'll be the big one, and that's great. And I'd say Susanna and Baz. I think
Mm,
those two, what they bring, is brilliant. And I'd always go back to someone like Phil Lerney from a
yeah,
human performance day, talking around, caffeine, sleep, and alcohol. It's
yeah.
probably something most people enjoy caffeine, they enjoy a few
I
drinks,
struggle
but
with all three of those.
yeah, but things like that, that to me is how we differentiate ourselves. Talking about, um, if you look at an individual every day, what are the topics that you as a coach can have a fundamental impact and change on? And you've got things like stress and hormone management, you've got sleep, caffeine, you've got menstrual cycle and female health. Those
Mm,
are really impactful topics.
yeah,
And that's what from a content point of view, I wanted to always make sure we are at the forefront.
yeah. No, agreed. I mean, the one thing I think I want to ask is, what do you want people to leave PerformX feeling, or like from a knowledge perspective, like how do you want people to feel after having either 1 or 2 days there?
That I think ultimately they should think they've got value. I think no, there's a couple of things. One is, coming along and going, that was amazing.
Yeah,
The content there, I can, and ultimately, like I said earlier, you've got to come to it and be able to go away and either implement it directly or go, I hadn't thought about that, or I didn't know that. I'm going to go and read up on it, or I'm now going to go and engage with that
yeah,
brand, that individual. Because I think that is the aim of it, is that we're putting the event on, we're bringing the content together to better the industry. And that from my overarching, the thing I love is facilitating and bringing people together, which
mm,
sounds a bit of a, I don't know the terminology, but
yeah,
like I've always done it in like randomly, like facilitating and bringing people together where you understand you've got a coach, but they need to listen to the best in the industry. Bring those people together. That's what I want to get out of it.
yeah,
Seeing that happen, and then the industry becomes a better place. But I think for people coming along, if I could see people going, talks are absolutely unbelievable. I met a load of people that, like we said earlier, I hadn't spoken to before, but also I've learned how I can implement X, Y, or Z into my own business.
yeah,
That's ultimately what it should be. It shouldn't just be come along and it is what it is. We want people to really come away and either implement it or have met new people that then they develop their career, develop their knowledge, anything like that.
yeah. And like one small bit of advice could completely change their business model, both, and how they view it.
Yeah,
And
having an
that's
open mind and just going into talks, listening to them, trying a practical, you know, training with people, just talking, I guess ultimately just going and talking to people and not, I think there's especially with social media, there's these people that have got lots of followers, but at the end of the day, the one thing I've learned, they're just humans, and
Yeah.
you know, you go up and speak to them, you know, they're not all heroes, you know, it's not like
Mm.
they're a different type of person. But if you are a coach and you admire someone or you've seen them on social media, go up to them and speak to them and say, how did you do it? What did you do? And most of the time, they are so willing to give information back.
Of course. They do just want to help. Everyone just
Yeah,
wants to help. Well, I
yeah,
hope so anyway.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and but that's where we get the right type of people, I think, rather than just, you know,
Yeah.
I've worked in years gone by where it is very just a commercial agreement, and they turn up and they walk off, and it goes back to my premise of that doesn't add value for anyone really.
It's true. It's very, very true. I mean, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Steve. I mean, I know that actually we do need to mention that people can buy tickets from the website and
Oh,
actually use the code
we're on the
MyPT
sales
Hub.
bit now, are we?
Well, yeah, I know. I had to be.
Yeah.
I had to be. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
doing my job if I'm not. Yeah, but use the code MyPT Hub 20 for 20% off of the tickets. And I guess you're going to be around for a couple of days that are there, Steve.
I
Be
will be,
floating
yeah.
around.
I will be floating around. That's my role. Apparently, I'm what do I get called? No, I can't. I won't say too many, but yeah, I will be there.
I have an idea.
Yeah, no, it's that fluffy sometimes is, but actually, I think, you know, speaking to the right people, being there, you know, making ultimately, we've got to make sure that event runs. You know, it's the typical swan or duck under the water. The legs are flapping, and that's like a lot of events behind the scenes. They're going crazy, but you've got to be calm on the outside, and you know that's something that people hopefully come away and go, that was brilliantly organized, we really enjoyed it, the content was great, and you know, we'll be back next year.
Yeah. And the duck analogy is up there with my favourites as well.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a lot of people that are like ducks, aren't there?
Oh, well, I'll be there. I'll be there. So if anyone wanted to come speak to me or whatever, and Steve, I hope I bump into you at some point over the couple of days. I'm sure we will.
Yeah, no,
Um,
definitely, it was awesome, and look, I appreciate you having me on, and it'd be great to see the sort of my PT Hub community there.
Well, I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope the next few weeks aren't too stressful for you.
Top man, cheers, Ryan.
Thank you.
See ya.